Radio is a transformative technology. It's a transformative communications technology, like the telephone, like television, like the internet. It has an extraordinary impact on people's lives. In fact, I emphasize the importance of the radio because I argue that you can make a reasonable case that the emergence of radio has more impact on more people's lives than anything Franklin Roosevelt says or does during the 1930s. You can argue today that the internet and television are much more important to the lives of ordinary people than whatever President Bush or Congress decide to do at this moment. Radio makes it possible for this country to eventually, by the end of this period, by the 1940s, to have a national culture. Prior to the 1920s, you had a culture that was largely regional. It differed based on what part of the country you lived in. In the 1920s, that regional culture starts to give way to a national culture. It's an uneven and incomplete process. By the end of the 1940s, you have a national culture. And by what does that mean? That means that people around the country are listening to the same music programs. They're listening to the same soap operas. They're listening to the same dramatic programs like The Shadow, for example. Advertisers can now reach a national audience. This makes it possible for products to gain popularity and support across this country. People start to drink the same beer across the United States. They start to eat the same breakfast cereal across the United States. Whether you consider this a good development or not, that's something that radio really makes possible. And I think above all, radio creates the possibility of what we call the shared national experience. It makes it possible for everyone in the country to simultaneously experience an event. Now, the event could be a political event like a presidential election. It could be a cultural event like a radio program or a musical performer. It could also be a sporting event. For example, the Joe Louis fight, where he defeats the German boxer Max Schmeling, and this is seen as a great victory over the forces of fascism by the United States. That's a great shared national experience, and that's made possible by radio. So, I mean, radio it's truly transformative, and of course, you know, in the beginning, relatively few people have radios. By the time you get to 1940, you know, radio is ubiquitous. It's in most households in the United States. The penetration rate is quite high. Not quite as fast as television, and not quite as fast as internet access, but still, it spreads very, very quickly.